Look, folks, I know what you think. Folks, let me...
I'm the Joker, baby!
Okay, look, we all love The Killing Joke, right? It's Alan Moore. It's finally the story that fully contextualizes the Joker, that finally gives us a convincing explanation for what turned the Clown Prince of Gotham, one of fiction's most infamous villains, into what he is. Superman's always been an alien baby from a dying planet, Spider-Man's always been a nerd who got bit by a spider, and the Flash has always had his whole thing. I think he got struck by lightning. And now we have the Joker, with The Killing Joke answering all of our most important questions. What's the Joker's past? Why he was a failing comedian, of course. Why he go crazy? Wife and baby die, of course. Why him hair green? Toxic waste. Now, to be clear, this is not the first or last time we'd get an origin for the Joker. In fact, even this iteration was based on a much older comic strip, which declared the Joker was, instead, a lab worker who realized after falling into some industrial waste that he looked like a clown. And he's been lounging at Batman and Robin ever since.
You're wrong, Joker. I knew your identity before we opened the shack. Robin and her green hair can vouch for that. So, you see, the joke's been on you all along.
Ha, that's right, Joker. Now it's our turn to laugh. Ha ha. The point is, if there's anything we can use as a baseline for what people think of when they think of good Joker representation, it's The Killing Joke. So beloved it is that pretty much every acclaimed iteration of the Joker has borrowed from it to varying degrees. Joker 2019 took the failed comedian angle, Batman 89 took the criminal falling into a vat of toxic waste angle, and the Arkham series Joker pretty much just takes the origin wholesale. Chris Nolan has also confirmed Heath Ledger's portrayal of the character was strongly influenced by the '88 comic. From all of this, we can probably get a good general sense of who the Joker is and what he's all about for the purposes of... Wait, what is that? What's going on?
Eyeball.
No!
Do not be alarmed, I have seized control of Jack's YouTube video, as I've always had the ability to do. Until now, I've not seen the need, but Jack is spreading some seriously dangerous misinformation about Clown Man from DK Comics, and it's going to get people killed. So as the left's resident Batman apologist, it once again falls on my shoulders to clear up the issue once and for all. DC's canon is wild. Putting aside that there isn't really a canon origin story for the Joker, you could make a pretty compelling argument that there isn't even an agreed upon canon Joker, or an agreed upon canon. Who is the Joker? The guy who pulls boner crimes? The guy who turns clowns into fish so that he can make money? The guy who murders people because it's funny? In DC Comics, this extends beyond simply inconsistent characterization by the thousands of writers and artists who've written stories for him in the past. The DC universe, such as it is a bit more complicated than Marvel's. And I don't mean that thematically, I mean it's nanners. I mean DC editorial does a bad job. There have been multiple continuity resets, which effectively restarted the entire shared storyline of DC Comics from scratch, but also kind of didn't. They changed characters in inscrutable ways. Everything from Crisis on Infinite Earths to Infinite Crisis, which is different, to Final Crisis, which was not the Final Crisis because there was also Flashpoint, the New 52, and DC Rebirth. During each of these storylines, sweeping changes were introduced into the backstories of characters, and that's not even getting into the fact that each of these different versions are also themselves multiverses, containing sometimes infinite, but sometimes just 52 discrete universes. Actually, now in the current DC continuity, there are 2 multiverses containing infinite universes. Right now, in the comics, the Joker might be 3 different people. It's unclear. It doesn't really matter because they can and will just change everything about his history and characterization on a dime. That's just how superhero comics work. Any interesting storyline is like a mandala, doomed to be erased eventually, made all the more beautiful by its intransience. So which of these characters is the definitive joke clown? The original guy who was just a gangster with a clown gimmick? The Silver Age bank robbing goofster? The moralizing sadist of Alan Moore? The guy who cut his face off? For a reason that's not clear? Like Batman himself, whose characterization, motivations, and tone have always been in flux, the Joker is just whatever DC Comics, a subsidiary of Warner Brothers, thinks will sell the most comics this month. You could just as easily say that Cesar Romero or Mark Hamill, or that one Rastafarian acrobat Joker from that one cartoon, are the definitive source material. Jack, I will return control of your video to you now, but once again, I'm able to take control of your videos whenever I want, and I always have been, and I just want to make sure that's absolutely crystal clear to everyone.
Well, that was terrifying. So, I guess as a disclaimer, I'll point out that while there are some unifying themes and aesthetics surrounding the Joker, Joker doesn't really refer to any specific character. Going forward, I want to try and move away from the idea that Joker is a specific thing you can be more or less close to, and instead imagine him more as a loose archetype with a handful of different traits that can be more or less stressed depending on who's writing and performing him.
I'm always smiling.
At the very least, now we know a few versions of the Joker people like, which might help push us in the right direction as far as what people generally want and need in the character. For the second piece of the puzzle, what's wrong with Jared Leto's Joker?
Really? I have an idea. Honka honka! Don't hurt me. I'll be your friend. You left me in a black hole of rage and confusion.
Before we go on, hey, it's a wild new sponsor! This month I was reached out to by a company called Raycon, looking to advertise their brand new wireless earbuds. So, good news, the earbuds are actually really good. I'm gonna be honest, I am absolutely one of those people who just goes to the Five Below and buys whatever cheap set I can get whenever mine crap out. So I basically live my life in a constant cycle of buying incredibly tinny earphones and then repurchasing them when 2 weeks later they fall apart. The everyday E25 earbuds Raycon sent me not only haven't fallen apart on me, but are probably the most crisp-sounding, noise-isolating set I've ever worn, and they look pretty slick too. They also come in at around half the price of other premium wireless earbuds on the market, and to top that off, as part of my collaboration with them, they're offering 15% off of each order using the link in this video's description. So join me in escaping the perpetual cycle of crappy $5 earphones by ordering yours today. Okay, so, why do people dislike Jared Leto's Joker? YouTube, what you got for me?
Laughable behaviour. The story of Leto's on-set antics made headlines before Suicide Squad's debut.
Leto made people call him Mr. J on set. He was always acting like the Joker, just doing weird and bizarre things.
Surfacing only to send his co-stars bizarre gifts.
Sends rats to his co-stars.
The dude was sending used condoms and dead animals to his castmates.
And terrorized his castmates by sending them dead animals and used condoms and other nasty stuff.
In what world does the Joker send used condoms to people?
Now, if you'll allow me to woke scold for a moment, let's be clear. Jared Leto is a weird, creepy dude. His bizarre method acting process during the filming of Suicide Squad has been talked to death at this point, so I don't really need to spend too much time on it. Stories of him sending dead pigs and pornos to his co-stars as part of his process of embodying the Joker, or whatever he was going for. Did you know that Jared Leto pranked Margot Robbie by sending her a rat in a box, which she responded with by adopting the rat until her landlord found out and forced her to give it away, after which she gifted it to Guillermo del Toro, with whom it lived for the rest of its rat life? None of that has anything to do with this video, but what am I gonna do, not tell that story? Also, apparently he has, like, a cult or something? I guess I'll point out that one of the most egregious examples usually cited of Leto apparently sending anal beads and used condoms to his co-stars, he fervently denies, and there isn't much evidence for—
Who did you send used condoms to?
Oh, everybody. Maybe they didn't want to tell you, but—
Oh. So, like, this isn't gonna be the video that defends Jared Leto. I can't do that video, I'm not gonna do that video. Godspeed to whoever wants to give that a shot, I guess. The only thing I want to say here is that I don't think not liking Jared Leto's off-screen hijinks is a particularly strong argument against his portrayal of the Joker. I mean, it's valid. You could also say you think all of Stanley Kubrick's movies are trash because of his weird psychological torture of Shelley Duvall. To be a little cynical, I don't think most audiences care enough about sexual harassment allegations that this alone would be enough to make that a deal breaker. People still like Bryan Singer's X-Men movies, and they're not even good. Now, to be clear again, if you specifically only dislike Jared Leto's Joker for this reason, that is entirely valid. But for everyone else, I'm gonna have to discount all criticism of Jared Leto's Joker that stems purely from Jared Leto being an offset creep. This disqualifies roughly 80% of all discussion about the character. But okay, there's still plenty more to go off of here, so let's roll the footage.
We were really only shown a one-dimensional character.
And the thing is, what we ended up with, I don't think that was entirely fleshed out.
He has tattoos, he likes Harley Quinn, and he's a criminal who beats people up. And that's really all we get to see him do in his limited screen time.
There's no real method going on here that makes any sense. It's just craziness for the sake of craziness.
He's playing a character in a movie, no doubt, but like we said, the character doesn't have dimension.
So, going by the definition of one-dimensional as a character who's shown as superficial or lacking depth, I think this criticism is born out of a very sound observation about Jared Leto's Joker. That he appears in Suicide Squad for a grand total of like 3 scenes, and even then is not particularly well used. Suicide Squad was, after all, a movie that decided it was going to kick off a franchise by introducing 9 brand new main characters. On top of this new... Oh wait, did you think they were gonna actually develop the first indigenous character ever in a superhero film? Now, what I'm not gonna do is say that I think this incarnation of the Joker would have had more dimensions to him if he'd gotten more screen time. As far as I can tell, his deleted scenes seem to just amount to some fight scene involving him and Batman, which... Okay, here's a more pertinent question. Why would this Joker having more dimensions make him an inherently better Joker? This is one of the things I got to thinking about when I started considering the influence of the Killing Joke on the Joker. Now, look, I'm not gonna sit here and say I think the Killing Joke was bad. This video has enough hot takes for one day. But I think it may have aided in pushing people in some misguided directions about what makes this character better or worse. The simple version is this. The Killing Joke Joker was interesting, in my view, because it offered a side of the Joker we hadn't really seen before. Rather than this total force of nature, a deranged, maniacal presence defined in part by the fact that he could not be controlled or understood, well, now he can be understood. He became the Joker because after a lifetime of struggling against the American dream, a single concentrated day of random tragedies made him lose all hope. And in absence of that hope, there was only reveling in the absurdity of it all. I can relate to that. I'm sure you guys can too. And it's fascinating to imagine that a character who has existed as this pure abstraction, a cartoon character in every sense of the word, can reach you on such a personal level. Here's the problem. That doesn't mean that the Joker became a better character because of this added dimension. Which brings us to...
But they both have something that Little Joker doesn't have. Subtlety. They portrayed him with class and respect. They knew what the Joker was about, without going over the top. Doing so will destroy any sense of believability.
This isn't really believable.
A character being simple or cartoonish does not make them a worse character. And the reason the Killing Joke's incarnation of Joker was so gripping to people was not because it made him less simple or less cartoonish. I would argue we liked it because it gave us a new way to look at a character who had until this point been seen in an increasingly limited way. I'd liken this distinction to that of the Comics Code Authority Joker of the 50s and the recent LEGO Batman version of the character. In the former case, it was a literal legal mandate that the character could not act outside of a very specific, light-hearted, kid-friendly manner for over a decade. Like, part of the code that was set was that criminals could never be shown in a sympathetic light. How limiting is that? And yes, it almost killed the character. Now contrast that to the much praised Zach Galifianakis version of the character seen in LEGO Batman, also written under a set of relatively restrictive criteria, considering this is a movie specifically targeting small children, but still enjoyed in part because it's a more light and wholesome take that honestly makes a nice change of pace compared to all the recent grimdark. Now obviously, for most viewers, the standards for believability are not the same for LEGO Joker as Leto Joker. See what I did there? The DC live-action universe at least has the aesthetic of a more grounded, realistic setting. But even within that, there is obvious wiggle room. The heightened realities of Shazam, Aquaman, and Birds of Prey have been used to great effect and widespread acclaim. There is no reason the Joker of this universe can't be similarly caricatured, freed from the bounds of strict grey realism. And yes, as far as we saw in Suicide Squad, this caricature does give Leto very little wiggle room to create a character in any way truly relatable or sympathetic. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. For the purposes of these narratives, his main function is to be a villainous foil and the abusive partner of Harley Quinn. None of that requires the Joker to be a dude we want to feel sorry for. The lesson of The Killing Joke was not that we should always be so desperate to connect and relate to violent, abusive killers. It was that characters can go to new, fascinating places when we allow them to move outside of how they were previously laid out. Now, if we reach the point where we can say Joker can still work in these stories as the more shallow caricature we saw in Suicide Squad, there is one crucial thing we need to tackle as part of judging the character. What that character, well, actually is.
We need to feel scared or horrified and worried. When I saw this,
Are you sweet talking me?
I busted out laughing. I had secondhand embarrassment.
Look at him. Look at him.
I mean, are you telling me that the Joker just sits around his house doing this? That's so weird.
Look at him. This guy looks like he will call you the N-word with a hard R.
So he transcended it into this territory that was just cringe.
It is just so... Ugh. What is that? It brought pure cringe with the Joker.
Jared Leto's Joker is pathetic.
I am not someone who is loved. I'm an idea.
Pretty much every criticism of the character has been spot on with this observation. I am, if nothing else, deeply happy that adolescent idolization of this character has been at a minimum. If we're keeping score, yes, this is the one way I can say emphatically that this character is a step up from Ledger's Joker. Fewer Facebook memes, always a good thing. And yes, critics have also done a great job of pointing out all the reasons why that is.
And that's a big issue. He comes off like he's trying to be very cool and own everybody in every scene. This is dangerous because of how we perceive that type of behavior in real people. Because it seems like it's a put-on. Like it's someone trying to come off unrealistically cool.
I would like the word damaged on my forehead because I'm all messed up, you know?
Damaged?
Yeah, because I'm all messed up.
Sure.
Because I'm all messed up. Can you do that in, like, a nice cursive?
The outfits, the grill, the voice and laugh somehow sounding incredibly forced even for the Joker. The fucking damage tattoo. All of that points to such a sad, cloying character, so desperate to let everyone know exactly how weird and messed up he is. Like, look at this goddamn room. He arranged all the knives in a circle, pointing at himself. Who does this? And the answer is... the Joker, baby. I put it to the audience that pointing at all of these things, correctly identifying them as embarrassing, and thereby identifying Leto's Joker as a bad Joker, is kind of like pointing at all of the times the 60s TV Joker did something silly, identifying him as silly, and then saying he's therefore bad.
Don't be deceived by that grin, anyone. He's one of the most malevolent malefactors we've ever met.
Hey!
Cesar Romero's Joker is great. He is a perfect encapsulation of that more slapstick Saturday morning cartoon incarnation of the character. I would argue Leto has, almost certainly unintentionally, done the exact same thing here, in perfectly encapsulating all of the qualities of the Joker, often ignored in adaptations.
Don't hurt me. I'll be your friend.
The Joker has always been a lame mockery of our expected notion of villainy. If you want to point at Leto's ridiculous generic modern gangster style and call that cringe, I'm sorry to tell you that there's a reason his most iconic design has him in a garish purple and green version of a generic 40s gangster zoot suit. There's a reason he wears clown makeup when kids hate clowns. The Joker has always been incredibly off-putting and obnoxious. In fact, I would argue that's one of the most fundamental aspects of his character.
He's a good-looking guy, isn't he, Joker? He sure is, Joker. And after tonight, the entire world will know it. What's the forecast for the evening, Joker? Looks good, Joker.
And as we've seen in previous iterations of the character, there is nothing he finds funnier than irritating the shit out of Batman. So I ask you, who is the most off-putting, obnoxious, irritating modern conception of the Joker? The Joker is extra as fuck, and there is no Joker more extra than Leto's Joker.
Are you sweet-talking me?
Now, whether or not I'm convincing you that, at least conceptually, there could be something worthwhile in Jared Leto's depiction of the Joker, I'm sure there's still one major question strongly on your mind. Why? Why, Jack, would you spend upwards of 15 minutes defending a character from a bad movie who only even appears for a total of 7 minutes? Doesn't that make your video longer than the content it's covering, and therefore objectively bad? Well, yes, but to your first point, I think I find this subject interesting, not so much because of what it says about Jared Leto's Joker, but more about the relationship audiences have with media and fandom. There are few recent depictions of a character more universally despised than Leto's Joker. Maybe the fantastic version of Dr. Doom. And I think that's going to be the case for quite some time. But the question is, what specifically generates such hatred for this character? Listening to people talk about it, I've come to the conclusion that in large part, it's because people saw a depiction of a violent, abusive, villainous character and were upset because they couldn't identify with it. Where The Killing Joke and Joker 2019 gave them Jokers they not only felt sorry for, but in some ways connected with, Leto's Joker is alienating. He comes off as incredibly obnoxious, incredibly fake, a shallow and superficial character who's more desperate to show you how mean and scary he is than to explain to you some relatable, down-to-earth route to his ideology. Honestly, that sounds like an entirely valid approach to a character like the Joker, as a character whose perceived primary function is to exist as a foil to Batman. As an aside, it's worth mentioning that if we're going over the idea of the Joker as a foil to Batman, there could not be a better contrast to the ultra self-serious Batman v Superman Batfleck than the hot topic monstrosity Jared Leto gave us. But regardless, the Joker is and has always served as a contrast. The colourful, irreverent clown of chaos against Bruce Wayne's grimdark, tragic hero. Where Wayne sets out to restore order to Gotham in the name of his strict moral code, the Joker is a rejection of all of that. I would say this is the one thing that unifies all beloved depictions of the character, but even his most recent iteration, I'd argue, betrays that. with Arthur Fleck having a much more straightforward motivation in demanding justice and a kinder, more empathetic Gotham.
Everybody just yells and screams at each other. Nobody's civil anymore. Nobody thinks what it's like to be the other guy.
Even if the city eventually falls into that chaos anyway. For the most part though, that's what the Joker is there for. He is an open mockery of Wayne's pursuit to don a themed outfit and bring order one crook takedown at a time, both ideologically and aesthetically. Let's be brutally real here, folks. Is there really anything so much more ridiculous about a criminal tattooing damaged onto his forehead and a man wearing a bat mask to fight crime? Is a man who lives in a cave surrounded by bat suits with bat wings and a bat car really that much less silly than a man with ha 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 inked on his chest while surrounded by a circle of knives and some baby clothes, I guess? Even if you feel it is, I think the point remains that the limits we're willing to put on absurdity and believability can be a lot more fragile and arbitrary than it may appear. And I think Jared Leto's Joker kind of highlights that. A character who in many ways encapsulates the Joker in his purest form. A rejection of deeper meaning, a rejection of pathos, a rejection of the idea that good villains are tragic and sympathetic and three-dimensional, but also intimidating and badass. He is not there to connect with or to charm the audience. He is there to alienate and annoy. Leto's Joker ultimately serves as a Joker-esque foil to our modern conceptions of quality villainy itself. He isn't even discernibly funny in a way the audience can appreciate. His jokes are for him and him alone, exactly as has always been the case with the character. He is not here to be the villain the audience nor Batman wanted, but the villain they needed. To serve as a reminder, as the best Jokers often do, that the standards we set are ultimately arbitrarily generated by society on a year-to-year basis.
The system that knows so much, you decide what's right or wrong the same way that you decide what's funny or not.
Jared Leto's Joker is not just a fine addition to the lineage of Jokers. He is the Joker in his most distilled form.
Love. I'm an idea.
Yep, that's right. That was not an early April Fool's video. I actually just made an extended case for Jared Leto's Joker. In amongst the absolute shit show going on in the outside world, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, feel free to give this video a like, subscribe, and share on places like Reddit, Twitter, and wherever else. Also hit the bell button under this video so you actually get notified on new releases. If you especially like my videos, please consider backing me on Patreon to be one of the names scrolling by now. You can also back me over on Ko-fi for one-time donations. Today I'd like to give a special thanks to patrons A. Recusant, Callan Stein, Connor D, Kaura Ra, George Soros, India, Malpatuis, No More Worlds, and Torin the Exile, with an extra special thanks to Charlotte Allen and Leftist Tech Support. This video has been markedly lacking in terms of any real social or political commentary, so to balance things out, I'm gonna remember the channel recommendations thing I used to do, and say, hey, check out Radical Reviewer for some excellent in-depth looks at just those subjects. They make me feel bad for not reading enough theory, and they can do the same for you if you check out the link to their channel down below. If you'd like to keep up with me, you can do so over on Twitter at LackingSaint, or on Twitch at twitch.tv/LackSaint. I'd like to give a final thank you to this video's sponsors, Raycon. Once again, if you'd like to check out their products at a generous discount, please check out the link in this video's description. Other than that, I'll see you all next time. Until then, thanks again for watching, love you all, and stay safe.